Hello everyone, what's going on? Today we're talking on my final thoughts about Biomutant. This is basically a game I'm going to be dropping for 2021, and I'll explain further into this little first impression slash review. But I've played it for about 6 to 5 hours, and there's so much coming out, and there's so much I'm kind of busy with that I can't bring myself to finish a title this big and also this kind of janky at the same time, and that's just my personal opinion. We'll also talk all about that. TLDR thoughts on it. It's just not a fun time. Firstly, I'll start with some of the developmental history. I completely understand that this is a smaller team working on it. I get that 100%, but the way they touted the smaller team and the marketing behind it and the stuff is definitely false promises. These guys that they kept touting were the ex-developers of Just Cause, and they had experience in the sandbox open world field. They're making something cartoony and crazy and unique, and all their trailers leading up to it, especially the big CGI ones and gameplay stuff before, all looks great. For example, in some of the gameplay stuff back in 2018 and builds of that nature, enemies would actually react, for example, if they got hit, so that's a huge step up from what is currently in the game. So there's a, bunch of tiny things like that. And with the developmental history of Just Cause behind these guys, you'd think we'd get some pretty saucy gameplay. These guys are making some of the best, if not, in my opinion, one of my favorite sandbox open world games to play through in any type of, open world genre with guns and blowing stuff up. And Just Cause has always scratched that itch. But this one, Biomutant, you don't feel any of that influence, honestly, anywhere except for minus the narration. The way you traverse the open world, the way you interact with things, it's just not that great. It's very boring and bland. I will talk about some positives before I go too into the negatives. It is a pretty gorgeous game, right? It looks great. I love the character models. I think everything looks spectacular in terms of how the foliage and stuff moves throughout the wind and the wind effects that come across when you're walking around these giant mountain tops, and the way the trees sway and the god rays come in from the sun. All of that's great stuff. It is a genuinely pretty game, but that is truly what I feel like Biomutant was sticking on. They were trying to make the most graphically appealing game for last gen consoles and forgot that they should actually make a functioning title. That's truly what it feels like at certain points in this game. Let's talk about the gameplay first. I'm gonna save the story for last because again I don't know much about it, but there's a lot of gripes I have. The gameplay is very strange. I think the best way to describe it is the modern day equivalent of Drake and the 99 Dragons, right down to the comic book effects, my guy. The combat is lifeless. There's no weight or impact on any of the moves you do. You charge up a giant special fist, you ram it into an enemy, and they just flop over. Like, there's no ragdolling, there's no impact. They just flop over, stand back up, get back to fighting. You'll start whacking people with your electric fist. There's no impact. You see little hit sparks, okay, cool, but they don't recoil from the attack. They don't move. There's nothing. It's like you're fighting lifeless drones the entirety of the game. Bigger enemies feel like they're just bullet spongy to the worst extent, because enemies that are, bigger boss likes, again, they have zero impact, even more minimal now, because you swing on them while they're in attacking strings and whatnot, and there's no feedback. They just run right through you. Like, they have super armor on everything. It is very, very frustrating playing through the game, and the bulk of it is pretty much spent just waiting for combat to end. Gunplay is very janky as well. You have this weird auto lock-on system that sometimes hit and sometimes doesn't. I've seen bullets straight up phase through enemies. I've just stopped trying to figure out how it works. You do have a couple of handful of interesting combo extenders, like you could do your right trigger or your gun twice and then press the Y button. You'll throw your weapon as a ranged attack, which, okay, cool, but a lot of it that is the special abilities to chain into combos, they also just end up feeling lifeless. They have some cool animations, I won't lie. I feel like the core main character you play as has some pretty dope animations overall, but everything else you fight and interact with in the world is very, very strange. Going through the overworld is a slog, tons of ridiculous, boring Valve puzzles from like 2008. You turn the little knob a couple times, you press A, the narrator congratulates you, and you move on to the next section that should have just been open with like a key or something, dude. Like, it's stuff like that that really turns me away from wanting to invest myself for the world of Biomutant. And finally, the number one thing that wants to turn me away is the storyline. I think the storyline for Biomutant is so ham-fistedly awful that I can't even begin to describe like what is going on in the plot. It starts with you having to pick between the light path and the dark path over absolutely nothing. There's no particular reason why. It's just walking down a road and going left or right. It's really dumb, and it's supposed to symbolize darker light. Again, it feels very early access, and as you play throughout the title, you run into a myriad of other things that make your dark aura come up or your light aura come up, and it's all the dumbest possible like scenarios. Which faction do you side with, the good guys or the bad guys? It's like, well, why are they good and why are they bad? Well, we don't know, they just are. These are your option selects, you know. It's like, okay, well, give me something to work with here. The narrator bogs every hint of gameplay down. This guy talks about constantly everything. When you enter a room, the narrator's there to talk for you. Solving a puzzle, the narrator talks you through the puzzle. Looking at a board, the narrator explains what you should see on the board. Walking throughout the open world, he talks to you about the trees, the branches, the enemies in the distance. It is so much narration, and it wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? I wouldn't be as mad, because you can turn it off and all that and whatever. But what further makes this absolutely a dreadful thing to experience is when you play the core game and the narrator cuts in every single time you enter a room and a fight breaks out. Every time tiny grunt enemies are there, like literal level 1, level 2s, he will pull the camera over and be like, oh, those bad guys look tough, and then you have to fight them. Or he'll look into the distance and be like, oh, these bad guys look rough, and it's so dumb. And it's like that every time you enter a room, every time you do anything, the narrator's there to talk. If the animals are talking, the narrator's talking for them. Like, why not just, I don't know, have one guy voice all the animals or something? I actually would have preferred that. Would add a little bit of comedic charm or something. Get an intern. I don't know, man. It's just frustrating. There's so much stuff that I'm just not a fan of. The storyline is just not fun. It has the most generic kind of plot I've ever seen. You know, you lose the mom, you lose the dad, great evil threat, kill the world eaters, blah, blah, blah. They talk about the world eaters all the time. The swimming makes no sense. I'm molding now. I think you guys kind of get the gist. I'm not a fan. It isn't a particularly awful game. It is just very poorly executed. It feels like it is like going out of its way to personally waste my time. I feel like that's the best way to describe this title. When games do things like Biomutant does, constantly pulling you out of the experience, making you watch cutscene after cutscene after cutscene, having a slow narrator repeat everything that every gibberish animal is saying after they finish talking, like these long 3 to 4 second bites, and then the narrator comes in for another 3 to 4 seconds. Like, there are so many things that Biomutant has that deliberately feels like you are wasting my time, and that's when I just don't want to play your game anymore, right? To me, that's when I'm like, I just gotta tap out. There's so many other things I could be playing right now, and that's kind of where I am with Biomutant. Hopefully, again, we'll get some patches, we'll get some things to fix things up, and things will get better, but for now, I'm out. I can't play any more of this, bro. Regardless, thank you all so much for watching this video. Sorry it was very negative. I try not to be a negative kind of guy on this channel, you know. I like voicing my concerns about games and stuff, but again, like you've seen, I also like voicing my positives, and unfortunately this is just a game that I haven't felt not only this disappointed by, but also just felt like this is just a slew of negatives. I was really expecting a lot from these developers and the history behind it and the multitude upon multitude of delays, and this is just a game to me that unfortunately either needed to just be straight up canceled and you guys start from scratch with something new, or just further delayed, and you took none of those options. And especially because it's an indie team, I don't see the harm in I guess in making us wait. Atomic Heart and plenty of other titles are out there doing that, and I'm perfectly fine, right? But hey, what can I say? That's my personal thoughts. Hope you guys enjoyed the video once again. I wish you all a very good day. No ill will towards Experiment 101 or THQ Nordic. I think you guys are going to be working on something spectacular for your next title. But personally, Biomutant was a miss, and I wish you all the best with further projects. Alright, thank you guys again for watching. Have a great one, guys. Peace.